Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, I'm going to be creating a mini Christmas cottage. For my project, I'm going to be using this birdhouse that I picked up from Tkmaxx. It was half price. I did a Halloween version of this, a witch's cottage. I will link that if you're interested. However, today I'm going to be taking a different approach. I'm using Paint Couture's Italian Ivory. I still want to lighten this house up. Obviously, the yellow doesn't really go with the look that I'm trying to achieve, but I'm definitely going with more of a winter Christmas look. I'll still be incorporating some of the traditional red and green colors for Christmas, but I definitely want this to have more of a wintry feel. So the Italian Ivory mineral paint has a built-in top coat, so I am saving myself a step using this, and I'm just applying that paint with a small artist brush. I'm not too worried if I go over any of the white areas. I can just wipe that off with a wet wipe. So I'm working my way around, and anywhere that yellow appears, I am adding the Italian Ivory mineral paint. At this stage, I was wondering if I was going to keep the flowers, so I left them in there for the time being. And I ended up doing 2 coats of this Italian Ivory. I'm also going to be painting the base of this little birdhouse or dollhouse, but I'm leaving the front porch area because we're going to be doing something else. I'm then going to be using Paint Couture's Queen's Court mineral paint. Now, as you can see, I did start by painting the top section in pitch black by Paint Couture, but I decided that I wanted to go with a lighter color, so I'm just going straight over the top of that dry paint, and I will be doing just 1 coat. That's all I needed for the coverage that I wanted. I then decided that I would also add that same Queen's Court mineral paint to the door at the front. Now, I do love red, and obviously that does tie in with Christmas, but I don't want a lot of red. So I am going in, and I'm also going to paint over the black sections that I think is meant to be like sort of like a glass door. I just decided there's going to be a lot going on. I'm going to cover that over. Next, I'm going to be measuring the front porch area because I want to create a sort of 3D element. So I'm just measuring what space I have to work with here. And then I'm going to be using just some cardboard, and I'm measuring out how much I'm going to need, marking that with a lead pencil, and then I'm going to use scissors to cut it out. I'm doing it this way because it is far too tricky to try and get into that little front porch area. Very tricky, so it's better to just create the floor area space that I'm going to need, work on that, and then put it in position. Now, the door does jut out a little bit, so I did go in and make some little adjustments here and there to get it to fit better. I also ended up cutting out 2 little rectangles for the front step section of the porch as well. I then took out Paint Couture's Embossing Medium, and I'm going to be using that with a spatula over the top of a brick stencil. I want this to have a raised sort of 3D element to it, so using the Embossing Medium is perfect for achieving this result. Once I've worked on that section, I'm going to lift it up, and then I am going to reposition it so that I can continue the pattern. I am being a bit impatient doing it here. Ideally, you want to let the other section dry first, but I'm not going for perfect. I want this to look like an old cottage, so it's okay if each of those sections aren't perfect. I then repeated the same process on the extra little step pieces. When the embossing medium was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Peace mineral paint, and I'm going to be applying that over the top of each of the cardboard pieces. This is a lovely, almost French linen kind of a tone. I only ended up doing 1 coat on each of my pieces, and then once they were dry, I took out some Simply White chalk paint, and I've just got a little bit on a chip brush there, and I'm almost dry brushing that over the top of the edges to really catch the details of that brick stencil. When that was dry, I applied some hot glue to the back of the cardboard, and I'm just going to be using this to secure the flooring section in place. So I'm going to press that down, and then once that's secure, I'm also going to be adding some hot glue to the area where I have the 2 front step sections. To hide the corrugated cardboard edges, I just went along and added some hot glue, and I'm going to be able to paint straight over the top of this. I'm just going to let it dry and then come in with that same piece mineral paint. I did notice there was a few areas that I needed to go in and add a little bit more glue to, so I did do this, but it did disguise that edge really well. I then decided that I would use my hairdryer to heat up the glue that's holding these little red flowers in place, and I would pull them out. I'm going to do that on each side. They just didn't end up going with the vision that I had. And I also went in and quickly did 2 coats on the back of the birdhouse. I think I will do an interior Christmas scene if I've got time later on, but I'm just going to paint it up and get it looking all nice and neat. Next, I took out Paint Couture's Crust texture medium, and I'm going to be taking some of that out and putting it in a separate plastic container. I'm just using a plastic spatula or palette knife to do that, and then I'm going to be tinting it with a few drops of simply white chalk paint, and then I'm going to start applying it to the roof first. As I said, I do want this to have a white Christmas feel to it, so adding this crust is going to be perfect for creating that snowy effect. So I'm sort of sliding it on or scraping it on, and then I'm dabbing my spatula up and down on top of that crust medium to create little peaks that look like snow. And that's the beauty of using the crust medium, is it does hold whatever shape you put it to. So those little peaks will remain. So I'm going to continue to work my way around the top section of the dollhouse on the roof, just applying it where I feel that the snow would gather, particularly around the peaks as well. Again, always doing that dabbing motion after I have it spread to where I want it. Now in Australia, we do not get snow at Christmas time, so this is just my little way of having a white Christmas. But obviously, if this look wasn't for you, you could leave this step out. You don't have to add lots of snow. You could definitely just skip this part. Once I finished adding it to the roof sections, I then went down and started adding it to the front porch railings. And I'm just sort of scraping it just like before, just having a little bit, so there's a little bit of a build up as if the snow has sort of blown in perhaps overnight. I then moved in and started adding it around the base section of the birdhouse. So I am going to be having that all around the base. And again, if this wasn't to your taste, perhaps instead of that, you could put some flowers in the front section. You could have some fake grass perhaps. This is definitely a project that you can customize to suit whatever your style of decor is for your Christmas decorating. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. Once I finished adding the crust medium and while it was still wet, I took out Paint Couture's Sheer Frost German Glass Glitter. This is one of my favorite glitters to use. It is a clear glitter, so it is very subtle, but I'm going to be just picking up little bits of it with my fingers and sprinkling it on top of that wet crust medium. I don't want it to be super sparkly, but I do want that hint of that sort of glistening snow effect. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around, and anywhere that I have that crust medium, I'm going to add a little bit of that sheer frost glitter. I then took out my little salvaged snowman figurine by Tim Holtz. I've also got the Santa salvaged snowman. This is the smaller size, and I'm going to add some hot glue to the bottom of the snowman and add it to a paddle pop stick. This was a technique that I learnt from Lynn from L&J Goods. This is going to make painting these tiny figures a lot easier. So I'm just going to stick those down, and then I'm going to begin with the snowman. I'm going to start adding some pitch black chalk paint just to his top hat to start off with. Now I have not primed these, so I am definitely very mindful of this. I want to be able to wipe bits and pieces back, and obviously I like the color that it is already, especially for the snowman, because obviously I'm not going to have to go in then and paint him white. I'm then going to start adding the black to the buttons of the snowman as well. For the snowman's eyes, I took the end of a pin, dipped it in my black paint, and I'm just using that to dab on his eyes. They can be a little bit tricky. I did have to do a bit of tidying up with a wet wipe. A Q-tip is also helpful for this. These are just adorable. I did buy them from an Australian craft shop. I do not stock Tim Holtz, unfortunately. I also then took out Paint Couture's Firelight mineral paint, and I'm going to be using that to paint the carrot on our snowman. Once I finished painting the carrot section, I took out some bronze luxe metallic and I'm going to be applying that over the top of our snowman's scarf. I ended up doing 2 coats of the bronze. As I said, I did not prime this first, so sometimes you're going to have issues with your paint perhaps not sticking as well as you'd like. You might end up having to do 2 coats, so if this is going to bother you, definitely get a primer on there or perhaps a coat of white chalk paint. I also used that bronze on the broom section of our snowman as well. I then also added just a thin strip of that bronze around the top section of the snowman's hat. I let that dry completely and then I took out Paint Couture's Pearl Crystal Paste and I am going to be adding that over the top of the entire snowman. So this is going to give us a beautiful shimmer and shine. There's also little sort of chunks of glitter. This is definitely a great option to create a frosted look, which is perfect for that sort of winter wonderland theme that we're going for with our Christmas cottage today. So I'm going to be applying it over the entire snowman, also over the sections that we painted, so that is going to sort of mute those colors a little bit. They're not going to be as bright, but as we are doing sort of an outside scene, I thought it would look a little bit odd if they didn't have some sort of frosting on them, and this is just the perfect glittery touch. I just did 1 coat and then I set him off to the side, and now I'm focusing on the Santa. So I'm going to paint Santa's boots with pitch black chalk paint. I only needed to do 1 coat. This is a chalk paint, so it stuck really well. And then I also added it to Santa's boots. I then tidied up any of the areas that I didn't like with a wet wipe. I then took out Paint Couture's brand new Cardinal Red Luxe Metallic. Guys, I have been wanting a bright Christmas red metallic for a while, and Paint Couture definitely delivered. This is so stunning and bright and beautiful. I'm going to be painting over all of the areas on Santa that would usually be red, like his pants and his coat. I am going to leave the sections where he would probably have that white sort of fur trim. I'm going to leave that, just the color that it comes in. And again, if I get any of that paint in any of the areas I don't want it to, I can just wipe that back with a wet wipe. I did end up doing 2 coats just to make sure I could touch up any of the areas where I didn't go quite bright enough. So I definitely recommend that you grab Cardinal Red Luxe Metallic paint. It is brand new. I'm just using just a normal paintbrush to apply it, just a little artist brush. And this is definitely going to be great to have in your craft kit for your Christmas crafts. I then took out some bronze luxe metallic and I'm just going to paint on just a little belt buckle for him. I then let it dry completely and then I came in with that same pearl crystal paste. Now we do have that beautiful luxe metallic, and don't get me wrong, I do love it, but he still needs to look frosty. He's sitting outside. I'm imagining him as an outdoor Christmas statue, so he does still need that frosting, but you can still see how beautiful and vibrant that Cardinal Red Luxe Metallic is. It's definitely going to be a favorite. I'm going to be using it a lot in my Christmas crafts. Once my little figures were completely dry, it was very easy to remove them from the paddle pop sticks, and I just sat them off to the side. I then took out some Simply White chalk paint and I'm going to be brushing that over the top of this little green garland. It's a wired garland. You can get these on Amazon. They're often called garland ties. These are a little bit shorter, however, but you could definitely trim the ends. So I'm just going over the top of them. I am going for that winter sort of frosted look, so I am going to go over the top of both of those. When they were dry, I took out these little mini battery operated fairy lights that I got from Amazon, and I'm going to be winding them through this tree that I got from Kmart Australia. You can also get these on Amazon as well. I'm just going to wind these little lights through the tree to start off with, just working out how much I want on there, and then I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap because I'm going to have this garland wrap around the door of our little Christmas house. So I'm just going to leave a bit of a gap. gap because there is a gap between where I want the tree to go and the door. And then I'm going to start wrapping the lights around the garland. I am going to straighten it out to make doing this a bit easier. It was a little bit fiddly, but definitely worth it. Adding the lights are what make a little Christmas house so magical, in my opinion. So I'm just going to continue winding those little lights around the garland. I definitely had to think about where I wanted the lights to be visible. And then I started positioning the Christmas tree where I wanted it to go, and the garland that's going to go around the door as well. I'm just playing around with that, working out the positioning. And then once I was happy with that, I sort of just pulled the lights through because I want them to come out through the side. And then I took out my hot glue gun, and I'm going to add some hot glue to the bottom of the Christmas tree, and I'm going to position that in place. And then I'm going to start adding some glue around the door frame so that I can position our garland. So I'm just going to be adding little beads of glue around the door frame until I have enough to hold that garland in place. Next, I'm going to be adding some more of those lights around the other garland. So I've pulled that strand through that we're already using. I've pulled that through the other side of the porch, and now I am wrapping it around that second garland because this is going to go on the front of the house. So I really like that I can use just one strand of lights to wrap around and get the effect that I want instead of having to have more than one. So once I'm happy with how that's looking, I'm going to position that on the front part of the house. Now, because this is a wired little pine garland, I'm able to get it into the shape that I want. So I do have sort of like a sweeping sort of a look there, a curved look. And then I'm going to sort of continue the journey down to the right, but I'm not going to glue that in place just yet. I'm then going to start applying some hot glue to the section where I want the garland to go around the roof section. I'm then going to be adding some of these sweet little, they look like ornaments, but they are little jewelry beads. I had them in my stash, but I think you can get them on Amazon or perhaps some other craft stores. I'm just going to be adding 4 of those across the top section, and I'm just using hot glue to glue them in place. And I stuck with the pearl tones because we are going with that white Christmas look, and that definitely all just sort of tied together. I then took out this little wreath that I got in a multi-pack off Amazon. I will try and link these below. I did buy them a little while ago though, so hopefully I can still find the listings. And I'm just going to add some hot glue to the back of that and position it on the door. And I'm really loving how that looks. It's a very sweet addition. I then added some glue to the bottom of Santa. Now I've got a bit more of an idea of where I want things to go, so I'm going to glue Santa down on the bottom right-hand corner there. I have him sort of angled and facing in, and then I'm going to do the same with the snowman on the left-hand side. I then decided that I would also add a wreath on each of the windows on each of the sides. I then took out some more of that crust mixture, and I'm going to add some more where the Santa and the snowman are, so it sort of is building up around them. It's also going to help hide the hot glue that we used to attach them, so I'm going to add that around the Santa, and then I'll also add it around the section where we have the snowman. I'm also then going to extend the snow just around the base of our Christmas house. Next, I then decided to add some of that crust medium to the windowsill. I just felt like there was a lot going on already. We had the wreath on the window, so I would just add some snow to those because I'm assuming we don't have snow, but I'm assuming that flowers would probably die. I then started adding some of Paint Couture's Pearl Crystal Paste to the windows. I thought that these were perfect for creating that frosted window look. So I'm sort of focusing it a bit heavier in each of the corners on the right hand side there, but then I'm spreading it up a little bit. So I definitely wanted to get that frosted window effect. I'm also allowing some of it to accumulate on the outside sections of the window as well because it did remind me a little bit of ice. I'm going to be repeating the same step on the window on the other side of the house as well. I also then decided to add some on that cute little window up the top too. Next, I took out my hot glue gun and I'm going to add some beads of hot glue so that I can sort of train and position the lights where I want them to go so it looks a bit neater. So I'm just pressing that down until that's in place. I'm going to add some more glue along the bottom section of the house so that I can have that wire for the lights be down the bottom. And then I also added a little bead of glue on the back of the battery pack. I figure I can always sort of add a little bit of heat and I can take that off a little bit later if I want to. Once I did that, I took out a stick from my garden and I'm going to be cutting that into probably about 2 centimeter long sizes because we're going to make a little wood pile to go at the side of the house. I'm then going to start sticking our little mini logs together just with some hot glue. Just had a little bit of a play with the configuration, just tried to think about how it would look in real life and also what will actually fit on the side of the house where I want that to go. So I'm just going to continue to glue those pieces together. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to be adding some glue to the side section of the house. This is going to help hide some of that thicker light wire. And then I'm going to glue that in place, add a little bit more glue on the bottom, make sure that's all secured. And then once that was dry and secured in place, I took out some more Crust Medium and I'm going to use this to help hide the light wires. So I'm just going to sort of pile that up along the side of the house until the lights aren't as visible. And I'm also going to be adding some to the top of the wood pile. I then took out this sweet little sled ornament that I had in my stash, and I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown glaze over the top of it. We're going to be staining it a darker timber tone. So I'm going to be just applying one coat over the top of the entire sled, and I am very mindful of the fact that you're going to be able to see this from a few angles, so I'm making sure that I get that everywhere. And then I am going to use a paper towel to sort of even that out and wipe back the excess. I let that dry completely, and then I took out some of Paint Couture's Simply White chalk paint, and I'm going to dry brush on 2 layers of this. I still want some of that wood peeking through so that it looks like sort of weathered wood. And then I took out IOD's Merry and Bright stamp, and there is a smaller Merry Christmas stamp in that pack. I'm just using some of IOD's permanent black ink on that. I have to turn it to the side so that it fits, but I still think it's going to look great. So I'm going to press that down firmly, and then I'm going to lift that straight up. I set that off to one side and took out this little beaded garland that I got from Kmart Australia, and I'm going to cut that apart, and I'm going to use some Gorilla Super Glue Gel to add those into my tree. So these are the perfect scale for little mini silver ornaments. I thought that the tree could definitely use some more. So I'm just going to glue, I think I ended up gluing 4 of those in, just really thinking about the different angles as well of that tree. So just using the super glue. As we know, hot glue can be a little bit messy, and I didn't want all of those stringy bits to get stuck in the tree. Once I had finished adding them to the tree, and then I decided that I would also add some to the garland that we have going up around the top section of the roof, just gluing those in place. And then I thought, well, why not also add them to the garland that is going around the door? So again, just using that super glue, dabbing that on. I alternated between applying it directly to the garland and to the beads. It was a little bit tricky in some areas. These are very tiny. Next, I'm going to add a bead of hot glue to the window on the house so that I can lean the sled where I want it to go and it will stay in place and be secure. Next, I decided I wanted to make some icicles. So I'm going to apply some hot glue on my silicone mat, just a line of that on an angle. And then I'm going to add little dabs of glue, and I'm sort of dragging the hot glue gun and sort of releasing it as I'm pulling it down so that the strand sort of cuts off. I hope that that makes sense. Just have a play with this. I have it on an angle because I want these to go in the roof arches. I want this to look like icicles hanging down, and hot glue to me felt like the perfect option. When it was dry, I just used a little spatula and I used that to remove it from the silicone mat, and then I'm going to repeat the same process on the other side. I'm sure that there are molds you could probably use. I know Tim Holtz did have some icicle, I think it might have been icicle tape, I'm not sure, but I didn't have that, so I decided to make my own. I then took out some of Paint Couture's crystal paste in pearl. I'm going to dab that on to give these a little bit of shimmer and shine. I'm going to apply that to both of the icicles. I ended up making sets for the other side of the house as well, and I did do a mini set for the little window in the center at the front. I'm going to run a bead of glue along the inner section of the roof pitch there to glue our little icicles in place. I'm going to repeat the same process for the other side as well. After I applied the icicles to the opposite side, I then added some glue to that front little window, and I did make some sort of like a mini version of the icicles to go in that section as well. And I decided not to put a wreath on the window there because I thought I would be trying something like this. I then came in with Paint Couture's Crust Medium that I was using previously, and I'm just going to run that along the edges where the icicles meet the rest of the dollhouse so that it all sort of blends in a bit better. Finally, I had some little presents in my stash. I think you can get these from Amazon as well, but I didn't love the gold that was on them. So I took out Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic, and I'm just going to do one coat over the top so that we can have a bit more of a shiny look. And as I said, I didn't really like the color of that gold. This bronze is definitely more in keeping with the look I'm going for. When that was dry, I used some hot glue on the bottom of each of the presents so that I could glue them in place by the front door. So I'm imagining maybe somebody dropped off some gifts for the people in this house. I like to think up little scenarios when I'm doing my creations. And here's a look at our finished mini Christmas cottage. I love how this turned out. I have been wanting to create a little mini Christmas house for a while, and I am so glad that I was able to achieve this using a combination of Paint Couture, IOD, and those really sweet little Tim Holtz figures. Let me know what you think of today's project in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find most of the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.